Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Best time of the week. Prowess goes live in our OBM opportunity. Really, just a live show series. It's amazing that we've been doing this for a year now, and it's been phenomenal. I am so grateful to absolutely all of you for every single time you have tuned in and watched in the questions and the interactions and everything. It's been thank you, thank you, thank you. So, as always, let's get started. Put into the chat, what is your favorite podcast? Put into chat, what is your favorite podcast? While you're doing that, for all of you who are new here, I am Ashley Connell, CEO and founder of Prowess Project. And what do we do at Prowess? We help women who have a patchwork quilt-like background, some ops, some marketing, some tech, some HR, really piece all of it together to become online business managers. From there, we take all of that data and we match them up with the clients of their dreams. Awesome. Okay, they're coming in. Okay, I too love Alex's Hermosies. Yes. Yes. I like that one too. The game. I'm listening to Kelly Roach's, which I really like. Also, hint, hint, for everyone who's watching, we're going to have a new one that you will definitely want to be watching, Miss Kimberly. Love it. Love it. Love it. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. We'll do a list at the end and send it out to everyone. Keep those coming. And Lee, I know you have some woo-woo ones that I'm sure that you're going to want to share too. Awesome. All right. So, high level podcasting. It's all the rage. It has been all the rage for a couple of years now. And there are so many entrepreneurs who are like, I need a podcast. I want to start a podcast. I want to be on a podcast. And as the online business manager, it is your job to take a step back and say, okay, great CEO, that sounds wonderful. Let's decide, is that the distracting object, or is that something that we want to put time, effort, money, strategy into making it something that is going to boost your credibility, boost your audience, boost your revenue, and so much more. Again, that's your job as the online business manager. And so that's why I am thrilled to bring on our guest for today, the amazing, the sparkling, the vivacious, the diamond adorned woman who you will not forget. I am so thrilled to bring on Kimberly Spencer, CEO of Communications Queens. I am going to let her give you the overview of her, how she got here, all of those things, and we will dive straight in. But y'all, you don't need a cup of coffee. You don't need that energy drink. She is all of that for you. Kimberly, hello.
Hi!
Oh, hi. It has been a long time coming. We are so thrilled to have you.
I am so honored to be here with the Prowess Project. As you know, Ashley, like what you're doing in the world for caregivers is so near and dear to my heart. I am so excited to support this community because I absolutely love the spaces of opportunity that you're creating for them.
Thank you. That really does mean a lot. I say this all the time, but it's such a better, well-rounded, enriching conversation when you get it. When you get the um, the value that our OBMs can really bring to a business and just these women in general. So thank you. So as always, we start out with this one question the question is, give us the quick and dirty of how you got to be where you are now. However, I joke with Kimberly that she has had 9 lives. And so this will not be quick. It may be dirty. It will not be quick. Kimberly, have at it.
So if we were to go from the simplistic, like backtrack 3 years ago to when I was stuck in Australia and I was looking for a form of lead generation for my coaching business because of my visa, I couldn't do my main form of lead generation, which was live events. And then because of COVID, I couldn't do my main form of lead generation, which was live events. So I'm stuck in Australia with a family to provide for. and my husband's industry is completely shut down. And I remembered a podcast interview that I'd had back in 2019 that had resulted in about a $10,000 contract and for a coaching client. And I was like, what if I just double down on podcast interviews? Because I'd had a podcast for a while. I'd had a podcast since 2019. But what I saw was our podcast would generate some leads, but it was more for cultivating and nurturing the leads that we already had, that people wanted to be a part of our community, but they weren't yet dipping their toe into for making the sale. So when I started podcast guesting, I told my team, I said, let's just like double down on this. We started doing 100 podcast submissions a week. And then, it was bananas. And then we figured out a strategy that we then curated. Fast forward to 9 months later, we generated over $70,000 in new business revenue for my coaching company, Crown Yourself. And then now we've done over $250,000 in new business revenue from podcast guesting alone. And we started a whole new company from it called Communication Queens that we really support our clients who are the visionaries, the walking transformation stories. They have a business, but they also have like this purpose and this life story that is juicy and rich and filled with adventure and the ups and downs and the hero's journey. And they're a little too busy to manage getting booked on podcasts and doing 100 podcast submissions per week, which is what we do. And so we take care of that for them. And so started off a second business, but what's great about podcast guesting is that I get to leverage my first life, which was in screenwriting. I was 17 years old. I just out of high school. I got started working in Hollywood, and I was working as a script reader and as a production assistant, script supervisor. And I got very familiar with how stories really sell. And honestly, there's only about 7 stories, archetypes that actually work. And if yours diverts from that, then there's a reason why it's not actually converting. And there's a reason why there's no box office sales. So it works just as much for screenwriting as it does for your storytelling ability on podcasts. And so I get to combine that skill set that I curated after getting my first feature film produced. And I co-wrote it with the director. It got produced, got distributed by Lionsgate. Fast forward, a few lives later, I realized it was coaching that I was into. But I love supporting leaders and walking transformation stories and helping them get their story out into the world, but in a way that it's going to really be that cinematic, epic adventure that's going to take people along for a ride.
Where do I even begin? Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. First thing that I heard that I really want to underscore for everyone in the audience, what you said was so perfect. You took something from your past life, and because you have this incredibly valuable, really 1 in a million, if not, 10 million experience that you can then leverage in your job now or in your business now, that makes you different, stronger, better, a premium product. I have never heard. I've been on so many different podcasts. I've been in marketing for 20 years. I've never heard this 7 different stories. I've never heard that before. That's and you are helping all of these people really craft that. Oh my gosh. Love it, love it, love it. Awesome. Okay, so what we hear from online business managers quite a bit is they are working with their CEOs, and the CEO is jazzed about podcasts. Maybe they were on one, or maybe they're looking around and doing some competitive analysis, and they're like, podcast. I need a podcast. OBM, go figure out, how do I do a podcast? And I'm going to do it once a week, and it's going to be great, and it's going to get all these views, and I'm going to be the next Brene Brown. What would you suggest to our online business managers that they stop, take a breath, and really talk to their CEOs about?
Yeah. So the best way to start a podcast is to not start a podcast. and what I mean is that having done live events and having been in show business in the past, it's very easy. It's challenging. Building the stage has its challenges, but you can pay the event coordinator. You can pay the the building location. Same is true with podcasting. You pay your podcast editor, you pay the OBM, you pay who your podcast manager. If you hire someone to do that, you pay your podcast production team. It's easy to create the product. It's very hard to build the audience. And man, if you've ever like worked on building and growing your audience, if you've seen the numbers on social media and they're just like slowly kind of coming in, the same is true with podcasting. And it takes a while of consistency and repetition and being on an honored production schedule, which is why I love your show, Ashley, because you are consistent. Like you've been doing this for a year and it's at the same time every year, just like Oprah. Like there's if Oprah was like, I felt like producing on Monday, but I didn't really feel like it, or work got busy, or things like life happened. And that's what happens with podcasts. That's why we say at our agency, we only book our clients on the top 5% of podcasts. Well, that's not that hard because 90% of podcasts don't get past 10 episodes.
What?
Yes. They produce 10 episodes, and you can do that as a strategy. So if your visionary is wanting to launch a podcast and is this going to be a consistent thing? Is this going to be a one-time launch podcast? It's like a seasonal, it's correlating to a launch of a product that you're doing. And then it's this one podcast that's going to live as an evergreen freebie or as a bonus or as something valuable for your audience forevermore, but you're just not going to add to it? Or is it going to be like like an episodic show that every day you're going to expect that show to come on when it comes on? Like I know that people expect our Crown Yourself podcast that we've had for now 4 years to come out on Monday and Wednesday. And I know that our Communication Queen podcast, it comes out every week on Tuesday now. Like those dates are sacred because it builds in trust with your audience. So first of all, if your visionary leader is wanting to create the podcast, look at, do they have the time, energy, effort, resources to build the audience that will coincide with the podcast, or will they have the time and the patience to put in the consistent reps of putting out podcast episode after podcast episode and watching those numbers crawl upward until they hit that exponential curve? Because that's the piece of where podcasting can take off. People see the podcast like Joe Rogan and Lori Carter and, James Wedmore and Brendan Burchard, and they have this exponential curve of like massive amounts of downloads. Well, it took a while for them to get there to where it hits that exponential tipping point. Yes, podcasting can be an extraordinarily valuable asset for your business. And are you in a space financially, operationally, to manage and sustain the lower numbers until you hit that exponential tipping point?
So interesting. Okay, so let's say that they decide, you know what, maybe not ready for a podcast, but they're interested in guesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We get that a lot where visionaries are like, hey, can your OBMs help me get on podcasts? This is your bread and butter, sister.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, how should we be thinking about that?
Well, since 90% of podcasts end up only going past 10 episodes, you have to see like, what are the quality of podcasts that you're going for? Now, we've had clients who have wanted to they want to get on like School of Greatness, or now it's like called The Daily Motivation with Lewis Howes or something like that. But is your story at a place that's actually interesting enough to get there? Mm-hmm. That's a huge piece. Like, if you listen to a Tim Ferriss podcast, they're interviewing people who are masters of their craft, who are experts in their field. And that's not to say that you're not, or your visionary leader is not, but what is it about their story or about their level of mastery in their industry, in their field, and what they're creating that you can position them into that space where they can get on those global top 100 podcasts without skipping a beat, like where it's a no-brainer. So if you're not looking at that, if you're looking, it depends on what the strategy is. So it comes to beginning with the end in mind. So I know, Ashley, you had mentioned about getting booked on podcasts versus hiring a PR team. And I said, PR is great, but, and PR, absolutely wonderful for building your business. I mean, I've been in Forbes, CNBC, Thrive Global, on Netflix, like you name it. I've probably been on that platform. Not yet Entrepreneur Magazine or Success Magazine. We're working on those.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, like none of those actually tangibly generated into sales. They generated into, you know, a little bit of extra boost of social proof of, oh, I've been in Forbes. Yeah. And did it directly correlate to sales. So you have to look at what is the end in mind? What is the end goal of what you want to achieve? To achieve greater revenue and greater visibility at the simultaneously, podcast guesting can be a great way to do that. I know I've done over $250,000 in lead generation from podcast guesting. It can be a great way. It comes down to the strategy then of what you're approaching, because those podcasts that generated that income was not a global top 100 podcast. It were smaller podcasts, more niche podcasts that followed our 3-step Triple Crown formula for getting people booked on podcasts. So the first one, and I will share it with you here, bringing it to all the OBMs. Yes. We first look at this. The first tier of our crown is looking at what are the podcasts that will give you visibility, authority, and expertise. So these are the ones that are like in your niche. So for example, if I was an OBM for a female empowerment coach, and that female empowerment coach, she's going to go on other female empowerment coaching podcasts. And those podcasts already have a built-in audience. Well, their audience may translate to some of your work. Their audience may transfer over. It may take a little time, because if the female empowerment coach is going on other female empowerment coach, this female empowerment coach, who's the podcaster, already has a built-in audience. And what she's doing is backing up probably what she's already said in some different form or variation. And there's value to that for both people, because it establishes your client as the OBM. It establishes her as an expert in her industry. And it also backs up, validates what the podcaster says in probably their solo episodes. And so it adds credibility to the podcaster, and it adds credibility and clout to you. But typically we don't see those end up as conversion ones. The second one that we look to is the ideal customer avatar. And this is where you as the OBM guide very much so who that is and who is converting. And that's where you target the podcast that your ideal customer avatar is listening to. And then the third one is based on story. So what are those pieces of your story, of the visionary entrepreneur? What are the pieces of their story that are different, unique, special? Because when you hit those pieces of their story, they may not be in a place to necessarily, I've had those convert actually more than ideal customer, simply because when you hit where their story is, you're hitting at their pain point. Like, for example, when I've gone on podcasts about bulimia or podcasts about just escaping mental illness challenges and just being able to get through, growing up with an addict for a father and growing up with a 10-year battle with bulimia and being sexually abused as a child. Like, these are pieces and nuggets of my story that I'm very comfortable sharing, which, by the way, I always tell people who want to go on podcasts, like, do not air your unhealed trauma. Like, that is not the space. Take it to the therapy office. Like, if you're comfortable sharing those types of stories, you can do it, but you have to have had the space of forgiveness, or else the blame, shame, and guilt that comes with those stories will resonate into your audience, and it does not create for a sexy customer attraction magnet.
Wow. Hold on. I just need to pause. That is so important, because as you were describing all of these life traumas, what immediately came to mind is that feels very, oh gosh, this is going to sound terrible, and just please I don't want it to. I respect the trauma wholeheartedly, and I feel like people are telling people to use that trauma to be trendy and relevant.
Do not.
Exactly.
Don't.
Exactly. And I just love that you said, no, that's not the way to go about it, because
Mm-mm.
the energy exchange, if you're not healed, it's not going to come from a place of, this was something terrible in my life and now I have achieved way more. It's going to be, this is a terrible thing in my life and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
10 steps behind because of it. And that's
Yeah.
okay if you are, just don't share it.
It's okay. It's not in a place in your story or maybe even in your business's story that it's necessary. Like for my coaching company, I am all about taking people from the victim to the victor, where they are in the midst of that transformation, because that's what I provide. Like we provide business, life, personal, relational transformation. So I'm okay with sharing those sides of my story, A, because they're healed and forgiven, but B, because it's also in alignment with what the overall ethos of my Crown Yourself coaching company is about. But if your company, if it's not about that, or if you don't necessarily have to share that, it does come down to like, A, look at what makes you interesting as a guest, and not always does trauma make you interesting.
Totally.
Sorry. Like that's sometimes this, especially, and it doesn't make you interesting if you're in a space of blame, shame, and victimhood. And that I want to be very clear and very specific with my language. Victimhood is the victim mindset that's carrying with you from the traumatic event, from blame, shame, and guilt. It is not the fact that you were a victim of an experience and that happened. It's not saying that you weren't a victim of it, but it's carrying that mindset with you. And until it's actually fully healed and there's a level of ownership and acceptance of that's happened and it's in the past, that's not something to be shared on a podcast, nor is that necessarily something that has to be shared publicly as part of your brand story or as a part of your visionary leaders brand story. Just because vulnerability is trendy, because Brene Brown is awesome at sharing and how amazing vulnerability is. I've gone on podcasts where I'm like, I will have a moment where I will say, you know what? I appreciate how you're pushing me to get to this point of vulnerability, of sharing some of the darker points of my story. But I'm pretty good with sharing the amount of darkness that I share. And I don't need to go into every single nitty gritty detail for you to have the full complete picture to know the transformation that's on the other side. Because what's actually more important as to why I'm here on this planet is the transformation that's on the other side.
Damn. That would shut me up so quick as the host. I'd be like, yes, ma'am. And I will show myself out the door. Yes, yes, yes. And what I want all of the online business managers to hear here is, you are the strategist.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this all the time. A visionary wants to get out there, tell stories, uh, be energized, all of these things. It is your job to point them in the direction and give them parameters. And so, Kimberly, I love everything that you're saying here, because online business managers, you take that,
Mm-hmm.
share that with your visionary, and you become the consultant. You become the guide. You are the Yoda. You are looking out for this person, not only personally, but also professionally, all the different things, mentally. Ugh.
Yeah, you got to put banks on the river of the visionary's flow. Otherwise, the visionary leader will just turn out to be like a lake of ideas. And so you as the OBM provide those parameters and those banks so the river can actually flow, and narrowing those down to narrowing the niche, making sure of who you're targeting for your podcast. That's why we use our Triple Crown podcasting strategy. Narrowing down, being clear and specific of who are we targeting? Is this a fit for our clients? And what we do as an agency is we have a dual feedback, like Uber, Airbnb in review dating after every podcast that our clients go on. So not only are we collecting testimonials from the podcasters for our clients, but we're also getting a rating from our clients of like, was this a fit? Was further business discussed? Because that's the other piece of looking at beginning with the end in mind. If you're going on, most people go on podcasts to expand their visibility, but it can also expand further business opportunities. Like one of our clients got booked to speak at Microsoft and Google. And another one of our clients just got featured in Goss Magazine. And another one of our clients got booked for a keynote at the LA Convention Center. It came with these other opportunities because of the practice of sharing their story, and gave, like, there's extra visibility that comes with that. But you have to know, like, what is the strategy that you're going into it first and foremost. Like, is it to book more paid speaking gigs? Because that's a way of driving in revenue. Is it to create more JV partnerships and affiliate referrals? Because that's a way of driving in revenue from podcast guesting. But it comes down to, what is the end in mind of what is the purpose of why you want to be going on, why does your visionary want to be going on podcasts, and what's actually best for the business for them to be going on podcasts for. Is it for visibility because you just need to increase the top part of your funnel, or is it also to, like, funnel people down into your products and programs?
Yes, yes, yes. So many things. How do you advise our OBMs to tell their visionaries that they need to show up differently if they are trying to book speaking gigs versus trying to get people in their products or programs? Or is it a matter of where they are guesting?
So with booking speaking gigs, if that can be a product in your overall product warehouse, as far as, like, one of the things is bringing in revenue for the business. If that is a product of speaking engagements is a piece of your product strategy, then that actually is a product that's being leveraged. Is you go on a podcast, you share, and then you're able to leverage that podcast to then get booked on other stages, because you can say, oh, I was just on this podcast, and you can listen to this interview and hear how this was done, and it gives you that clout.
Yeah.
It also, like, if you're looking at funneling people into your products and programs, that comes down to who the podcaster is. So the podcaster is going to be your best point of contact for the rest of their audience. And if you have a podcaster that absolutely falls in love with you and is just like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. I mean, Ashley, your intro for me was so awesome. And I know we've had collaborations, and that there's that power that comes from the podcaster vouching for you and who you are and what you do. And so that automatically puts your visionary into what is called embracing the drafting position. Because in drafting, you have the lead, and then you have the person who's not having to work so hard, because they're not being all like you would on your own podcast saying, like, oh, this is me, this is my information, or your own webinars of, oh, this is me, this is my information. You're having someone vouch for you, which automatically provides social proof, which then allows for them to not have to work so hard to prove how great they are or how great their products and services are, because they are that walking, living embodiment of the value of what it is that they do, or the services or products that they provide.
Chef's kiss. I mean, what do I say? Chef's kiss. So good. So good. One thing that I see that a lot of visionaries, myself, do that, and I'm curious if you have any tips here. I'll go on a podcast, I'll prepare, I'll bring my A game. It is amazing. I do the recording and do jack shit with it. So what are just some easy things that our OBMs can be like, okay, visionary, that's great. Let's repurpose. How do you think about it?
So we have a course called Podcast AI Accelerator. It's totally free. We can leave a link to your OBM so that they can take it. It's all the AI tools that we use to leverage podcast guesting. And for us, with our clients, we provide them with transcripts. We provide them with posts. We provide them with video clips. We provide them with social media quotables that are in their brand colors, that are formatted for their brand, because it's our job to support our clients. And like how we work best is we actually work best with the OBMs who are strapped with what they're doing and need somebody to delegate to. And that's our wheelhouse, where we basically take it and run with it, because those social media posts and the clips of speaking go so far, but it really goes beyond the podcast. Like, it goes to the level of relationships that you are developing. So often I like to equate podcasting and guest podcasting in particular, like dating. And you can have that really epic, glorious one night stand that you were so excited for that date and it went so well. And whoo, that was fire. And you never hear from them again.
Sounds like from you've had experience with this, Kimberly.
No, not at all. And I know this absolutely from a podcast guesting standpoint, because believe me, I used to do it where I was like, damn, that podcast interview was amazing. And I too would not share it, would not reshare it, wouldn't reconnect with the podcaster. And I'm like, you and the podcaster, your visionary is spending an hour of their valuable time as the visionary leader to have an intimate conversation that sometimes does get scarily vulnerable, like a first date, strip off your clothes, like, oh my gosh, here's my life story, vulnerable, to where suddenly then they never hear from the podcaster again. They never contact them again. They're no longer in your circle. So first of all, having a follow-up system with the relationship of the podcaster, like your OBMs build a relationship with that podcaster, stay in touch with them. And our value framework is, because it's not just about the sharing on social media and constant retagging and sharing. Yes, absolutely do that. Take the Podcast AI Accelerator course, leverage all the tools, run with it. And the relationship that you have with the person who has an audience who you're borrowing, like, that is more important than any social media post, because a social media post on average gets a 2 to 4 second maybe glance where it's like, oh, cool, they were on the podcast. And people don't really pay attention, but the average listenership for a podcast is 20 minutes.
Interesting.
Compare that to YouTube, the average retention rate is 4 minutes, and compare that to social media where the average retention rate is 2 seconds. And so the value comes with the depth of the relationship that you can form with the podcaster. And if your OBMs can better curate that, then you can stretch that episode so that not only are they talking about, your episode in episode 1 on the episode that you went on, but my gosh, I've had some episodes that, like with my mentor, Tirza Shirai, she is a founder of Blink Bar. She scaled her business from 0 to 30 million in 3 years, or 3 to 5. I think it was like 3 years. It was like 5 years. But crazy short amount of time to get to a business of that scale. Wow. And she came back for a revisit episode, basically, the sequel just recently that's coming out in January. I'm so excited. But I have talked about her interview since 2019 on probably at least 6, 7, 8 different podcasts, maybe 10. This one included, now 11. Like, it's constant free promotion if you have the visionary who can wow and dazzle and surprise and delight and build that relationship where the podcaster is so in awe of what they heard and what they learned from that person and how vulnerable and open and transparent that conversation is. It's worth your time to stay in touch with them, to say, hey, like, I have a book coming out called Make Every Podcast Want You, How to Become So Radically Interesting You'll Barely Keep from Interviewing Yourself. It's coming out in March.
Oh my God, can I be on this book? On this book, can I get this book and can you please sign it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's coming out in March. We're launching it in conjunction with the Podcast Connections in LA, which is where I'm from. And I am going back through my Rolodex of podcasts. I've been on over 250 podcasts now, to say, hey, can we do like a podcast tour during the month of March to promote this book? Because especially if any of your visionaries are authors, podcast listeners are learners. 3 out of 4 podcast listeners tune in to learn something new. And so if your visionary has taken the time, energy, effort to write a book, then it's a high likelihood that they will they will increase their book sales by going on podcasts. one of my friends, Nikki Nash, she was working with another podcast agency. This was before we started ours. And she she launched her book with Hay House, and she sold, I think it was like 3,000 other copies of her book just from this like short podcast tour that she did. And that's because podcast listeners are learners. They will tune in, they will buy the books, I cannot tell you how many books I have bought from podcasts.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is fascinating. I love how you're looking at this and being like, podcast listeners are learners. That is so true. I never thought about it like that.
It's a high caliber audience. Podcast listeners also, because this is a statistic that I researched for my book, podcast listeners have a higher income. So there's more money to spend typically with people who are listening to podcasts. They're learners, they're highly educated, they're more likely to have completed a college degree, they're more likely to have a high net worth job, and by that I mean they're making over $75,000 to $100,000 per year.
Wow.
So that is a prime target market just in terms of money and where their mental mindset is. I mean, the only thing that even comes close to matching that level of audience is LinkedIn for social media. And LinkedIn doesn't even have the numbers the podcast has. I think podcasting has 10% more than LinkedIn in higher income.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, Kimberly, you are like a vault of knowledge. This is amazing. Okay, I know we have just a few moments left with you. Here's what I want to make very black and white to our OBMs.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get the results that you are sharing with all of us, ballpark me. How much time would it take the OBM or a VA or someone to research how to do all of this, build all of the scripts, research who to go after, send all of this, follow up with all of this, do all the scripting, do all the transcript? And I'm sure I'm missing 50 other things that y'all do. How much time would that take?
You're looking at about 40 hours a week.
Holy smokes. You need a full-time person.
Mm-hmm.
If you are serious about podcasting and guesting, you are, wow.
Yeah. Like it is a commitment to a strategy. Like it depends on if you want to really attack it. Like totally. When we were attacking 100 podcast submissions a week, that was probably about 60 hours that my team was putting in to just podcast guesting, to finding all the lists. Now we make it really easy because we have a list now. Like we have the list. So It makes it really simple for us to be able to say, okay, well, we're going to go out and find and source these podcasts that we just have to look through our database. And so if you have the time to focus on, have that extra 40 hours or bring on an extra person who's a VA who can specifically research and do every single piece from A to B, from A to Z that we do, like for it. Absolutely. Like, and if you really want to know how, we literally offer the course on how to do it from A to Z. Like, and we've given that to some of our clients, like not given, we've sold it to some of our clients, but that who choose, they're like, I want the do it for me. Like, I want to learn how to do it by myself. And then we have our clients who are like, we don't have the capacity. Our team doesn't have the capacity for that, but we can leverage it, with us. And that's how we really work best, is with the visionary leaders who have the income capacity to bring on somebody else who's an expert in that field, to be able, who already has the database, to then push them out. And then we work with their team so that all the visionary has to do is just show up for the interview. Just show up, shine, dazzle with your story. And then I provide the visionaries with coaching on how to really share and better tell their stories.
That was what I was going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. That is worth its money or weight in gold. I mean, truly, having someone who is an expert in podcast guesting and knows the 7 top scripts and themes that sell in a movie tell you like, "Hey, this is how you do this." Wow. Oh, Kimberly, this has been so amazing. Like, it has exceeded my expectations, which I am shocked by because I was so pumped by this. Do you have any last minute things to share with our audience about podcasting, about storying, about talking to their visionaries, about you name it?
What do you think they would be best for them? You know your audience even better.
I see what you did there. That was a good podcast host trick.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they want to hear that this is doable and it's okay to have a partner, and it is also okay to show up with their visionary and say, yes, we can do this. Let's bring in an expert.
Yeah.
So I just answered my question.
Mic drop.
Yeah, I know. Making me do all the work here. Oh gosh. Anything else? Just anything you want to wrap up with? We absolutely will add that link to your free podcast AI tools. I'm very, very excited about that. As you know, you are on my vision board. I want to be a customer. So here we go. 2024, abundance, awareness,
Let's do it.
spreading the news. Everyone needs an OBM. Yeah.
Everyone
Amazing.
does. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and seriously, Ashley, what you're doing for the community of caregivers and your mission and your heart behind it. Oh, I love how you show up for these amazing caregivers and for your community. It is so beautiful. You are their greatest cheerleader. And like our job as an agency, like what we want, our positioning is I told, we just hired a new social media manager. And I said, I'm letting you know, our role is to be the industry's biggest hype girl. Like we only work with the coolest leaders who are doing just who have absolutely transformative stories. I mean, one of our clients, Megan Camille, she was just featured in Goss magazine. She was sex trafficked and prostituted when she was 19 years old. And she's gone on to build four successful 6 and 7 figure businesses. And she shares about how she leveraged what she learned from that horrific, dark experience into some great successes. And now she's a mother of 5 and works 3 hours a day. Like,
what?
How could you not hype that story up? Like, how could you not? Yeah. Like, it's so exciting that I get to do what I absolutely love in this world, and not only work in my coaching and business with transforming people's stories, but then get to really leverage the power of story and get people's stories heard in the world. And it's all comes full circle to this dream that I had when I was a kid, where I wanted to share women's stories. And I get to do that now. I mean, I work with some really cool men too. So, but I wanted to tell really amazing, great stories. And this is a really cool universe kind of colliding in a way that I didn't think it would. I thought it would happen in Hollywood, and it didn't. It happened in this way, which is so much better because I get so much more control. And for a control freak like me, it's just epic.
Oh gosh, it's so good. This is amazing. You are doing exactly what you meant to do. I mean, you just said it. The universe handed it to you. It's amazing. Amazing.
We get to hype up our clients, and we get to work with some extraordinary teams, and also something for your OBMs to consider. And this is something that with CEOs who are too busy and too strapped for like what we promise, which is 30 podcasts within 60 months, or not within 6 months, not 60. That's too long. 30 podcasts is sometimes the visionary is too strapped for time. And that also offers the opportunity for the OBM to also guest on podcasts. Like sometimes, OBMs may be more behind the scenes, but it does offer a really unique perspective when somebody who has bought into the visionary's vision can advocate for that. And so it doesn't just have to be you. It doesn't just have to be your visionary. It can also be the OBM who's going on podcasts.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much because not only are you borrowing like the reputation of the podcast host, you're also borrowing from the reputation, and other people are hearing a third party talk. Oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's a lot of like prime social proof right there.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing, y'all. Here, let me just sum this up. Get a strategy behind podcasting, and then hire Kimberly's team. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. It has been a pleasure. And that has to be like the best summation I've ever heard.
Hey, I do what I can. Do what I can. Yes. Again, thank you so much. We will absolutely do this again. Everyone, if you're wondering where to find Kimberly, we will have all of the URLs and the freebies and everything in not only the live stream summary, but also the podcast. So amazing. All right, y'all. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Until next time. Bye, y'all.